Standard question for a non-standard speaker. So we know each other for quite some time. Maybe
Yes.
you can give me give the crowd a background about how you got to where you are today. You started in the Navy, right?
Yep. Yeah,
And then you start from there, and then maybe give a brief overview of your career so far.
All right. So I spent 8 years in the military, in the Navy, working on crypto and different systems there. From there, I transitioned to the civilian world where I was going to be a doctor. And then I started working at the VA doing some medical research. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do this. There's too much pain and suffering. Computers don't whine. So I left that field and started working in the technology industry in the commercial sector. And from there, I've wheedled my way up to where I am today. Done just about every job from writing code, dealing with databases, building infrastructures, designing data centers, to the point of crawling through the rafters and pulling cables. So I've got a very broad career. I've worked in finance, I've worked in retail, I've worked in manufacturing, real estate, so I've kind of seen many of the business sectors, and today I'm in the exciting and insane world of advertising and media.
Great. And it's, I remember the first time we met, you were working on a project that was actually quite complex, providing access to third-party providers for certain periods of time, including onboarding, offboarding some systems, and be able to report on it for compliance reasons. Maybe you can provide us some overview. So Omnicom is a company, is a conglomerate, right? So
right. Omnicom Group is the second largest advertising holding company in the world, next to WPP. We basically do everything under the sun when it comes to advertising media. The division I'm responsible for actually is our media division, where we actually do the strategy and planning with our clients on how to get their advertising messages into the right media vehicle.
And I think in advertising there's a very particular challenge because you deal with creative people, right? There's creative individuals. There are securities.
Ego.
Yeah.
You're dealing with ego all the time. It's like anything. When I first started with Omnicom over 10 years ago, the first security challenge I had was, okay, we're going to have to get everybody to change their passwords. What? Why? That's so, you're stifling my creativity. Really? You can't think up a new password 4 times a year? Not very creative, are we? So those were the challenges to introduce and if you've seen Mad Men, it's pretty much like that. There's the same types of egos, the big power, and we don't have any regulation. But that's changing quickly. We have this wonderful thing called big data, and we're trying to keep the governments out of our player space right now, through self-regulation. But it's changing, and the amount of data that advertisers collect today and do the analysis on, even though we're anonymizing everything, there at some point it's not anonymized, and it's data in aggregate that we have to deal with a lot, and constantly staying on top of what's actually sitting on our systems.
So you've been doing security for quite some time. What have you seen change in the attitude towards security, as well as how the organization adopts security, and from executives all the way down to the administrators?
Yeah. Well, as much as everything changes, it stays the same. The reality is when you look across the recent chain of events from Enron to today, Enron brought us removal of corporate indemnity. That started waking people up and saying, oh, the CEOs and CFOs can lose all their personal assets if they lie. Yeah, we better make sure that everything's squared away now because I'm not losing my personal assets. And the second big corporate event that happened was the board of Target firing the CEO for their breach. That woke everyone up again and saying, wow, I can get fired if my security isn't important. So, those are the things that if we move away from, the FUD factor of information security, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and actually apply proper business principles as to risk management. At the end of the day, you're a risk manager. How much risk can we afford to take with the type of data that we're having? So you look at that, and if we move into that genre, and then you start incorporating holistic security programs into what you're doing as your business sector, then you start seeing better results. And I think the boards are waking up to the fact that, with the Sony hack, the Home Depot hack, that we're still waiting to see what happens with all that, there's real money to be lost. And it's not just, money and damages, but the money that you're paying out for, like Anthem Blue Shield. Now they're going to have to pay for everybody's credit protection for the next year. That costs money. And you're talking across 100,000 people, that's some money.
What about, let's mention money, right? So, there's this mantra almost that, to do more with less. Especially for what I've seen from security departments that, when they come back and say, well, we need a system for application security to cost $500,000, we get pushback from executives. How do you, as an executive, deal with that? How do you go out and get
really creative? So what you have to do is, and it depends on understanding your business, and you really, as you're moving up in information security from the analyst to the manager to the executive, you got to shift out, and I find my day being more of an accountant today than I am actually a security professional anymore. But you have to get really creative in looking at, well, how is the best way to approach this? Is your company a CapEx type company, or are they more an operation OpEx cash flow type business, and how can you manage these different aspects of it when you're looking to make an investment, and how are you writing your business case into saying, why am I doing this? Why is this good for the company? What am I reducing operational risk? Is this improving some client aspect? For us, one of the lucky things is we're seeing more and more companies becoming aware that not only is the company itself at risk, but all the people I do business with are at risk. So you're seeing more and more contract clauses coming in as you're doing business-to-business contracts with clauses stating you have to have a certain level of information security and that you're liable for that if you fail them. So you're using these tools to say, well, here's the risk that you're associating. Here's the revenue from this client. If we fail to implement this, which will abate that risk, then you're going to, all this revenue is potentially at risk. So, Mr. Business Executive, do you want to take that risk or not? And that's how you're doing it. And you're going to win some, and you're going to lose a lot at the end of the day. But it's about the creativity. If you're in an OpEx-oriented company that's looking at cash flow, one of the things that we found is that, maybe owning it isn't the right way. Maybe doing a managed service is the best way to do this. And when you look at, the type of operational staff you have and doing more with less, that means I've got one guy that's probably doing 6 or 7 jobs. So is he really doing a good job at security monitoring? Probably not.
And what about, so we'll hear some presentations tonight from leading vendors, right? And, RSA is just around the corner. Is going to be probably about 2,500 companies presenting there, and then maybe probably about 3,000 companies that are not there. And I'm assuming that you get inundated every day with people calling and saying, hey, if only I can give you, 10-minute presentation and you put it out, in a POC, and you'll be amazed about our technologies. How do you deal with that? Is that, I'm assuming if you only gave each vendor maybe 5 minutes of your time, you'll never have a time to actually do any work. So how do you deal with that today?
Well, it's like dealing with my wife, selective listening. Huh? What? No. You know what you need to do every year. You're preparing a budget. You're preparing a project plan. You know what is going to be on your radar, and you literally have to filter them out. You want to keep your ear to the ground. There's plenty of advertisement out there for everyone. Everyone wants to get in front of you and give you that POC, but you have to really select. Am I really going to do anything with this at the end of the day? And the odds are you probably aren't. So be fair to them and don't waste their time. They won't waste your time. So look, it's just not on my radar. I'm not going to deal with it. Or you get the cold emails. I just delete those instantly. I don't know who you are. I'm just deleting it. And the reality is, if I want to talk to you, I generally pick up the phone and find you. That to me is the best way, is a direct, active management of what am I trying to accomplish. If I haven't been contacted by a vendor for something I'm looking for, I go to Google. I find it, or I go to Gartner, or I go to IANS, or I talk to people, or I talk to my peers. Hey, what are you guys doing for this? All right, let's do something together. And that's kind of how we're doing things.
Yeah, so it's not really black magic. It's really just going out there and doing research. And I think that what I hear from you is that you want to find, you don't want to be found. From a vendor perspective, that's great. So, what about? So we had Michael Hankins from NBC Universal in March, and he mentioned that typically when it acquires new technology, it's leading edge, not bleeding edge.
Right.
Do you adopt the same type of approach, or what are your thoughts about like the really?
The track that I'm on today is I just don't want to own anything anymore. Besides information security, I'm also over global infrastructure. And when I look at what we do as a business, it really doesn't make sense for me to invest any longer in hardware, software. Now, I want to buy services that scale quickly to my business when I need it. If you look at, anytime there's an economic downturn, IT and marketing are usually the first lines that are cut in a budget for a company. So we look at what makes sense, from a human capital investment. What do we do for a business? How do we make money? Where should I invest? And how can I find the best cost solution for us? So managed service offerings are important to us because I'm not going to be able to hire a team of crack security engineers like the Fed will, and have 3 or 4 Tiger teams running at any one time. I'm not an AT&T. That's not my core business. My core business is getting people to look at some kind of advertising to buy stuff they really don't want, but we really want you to need it. So we convince you of that. That's advertising. So when we look at that and you say, okay, how are we going to go down that path? How are we going to afford this? You're weighing all those options.
And especially with a conglomerate, when you're working with different departments, do you do any internal education where you're being requested by the board or somebody else to come in and explain a certain aspect of security? Is this something that you typically do? How do you communicate security to other members of external teams, part of your company?
Mm-hmm. Well, depending on your audience, like they say, know your audience. So if it's a board level or a senior executive presentation, we're actually sitting in a room. We actually have a CISO council within Omnicom Group. That's the 5 CISOs from all the divisions. And we get together and we actually work as a collaborative group to say, how do we want to proceed? Let's review the current security policies. Let's upgrade them. Let's set the standards that everyone can start working towards. And then we leverage our, collaboratively leverage, our buying power to say, hey, we need a vulnerability management platform. I've got one. You've got this guy. Let's go to market and find out what's the best price we can get. So you constantly have to be collaborative today. Everyone's really connected. We don't tweet about it. We just do it. So sorry, that's a real bad head cold my kid gave me. Brat.
Glad you made it. So maybe the other question will be, who do you think does security right today? Like in terms of either a company or individual. We hear a lot about companies not doing security right, but there are companies you don't hear about. And I'm sure
you don't hear about them because they're doing it right. They haven't been hacked yet. Actually, I had another roundtable with a bunch of other CISOs, and we all kind of came up with this one conclusion. It's like, we're already going to go in, and a lot of us think the same way. We're already hacked. We've already been penetrated. The perimeter no longer exists because everybody's got a smartphone, a tablet, or they're downloading this app because they want to play the latest Candy Crush or whatever. And so you're already compromised. Accept that fact and then work towards risk mitigation of what are they getting to you. Find the jewels, the keys of the kingdom. Lock those down. How are you going to do that? How are you going to get to that? And then you can rest easy. But as far as doing it right, if you're doing it right, if you don't show up in the paper, But once you do, messed that one, So I think in today's advanced world of connectedness, we've never been more connected than we are today. Between you get Wi-Fi in the subway, everybody's got at least 2 or 3 devices on them, and it's just RFs flying all over the place, and I can get to anybody, anywhere, anytime I want, just about. And if I'm persistent, if I know what I'm doing, I've got nation states that I'm looking out for. I've got the criminal elements that are you have an incident where someone clicks on an email. Next thing you know, whoop, there goes crypto locker. We're sorry, all my files, I gotta have them. Did you back them up? No. Sorry, we don't deal with criminals. We're not going to be held ransom. We'll just shut it down, delete it, and start over. But that's the nature of my business. Now, if somebody who's a financial company that all of a sudden all their financial files and records are encrypted, somebody may be paying ransoms. Mm-hmm. You have to look at that and say, what's the best way for my business? So
I guess the typical question is what keeps you up at night? You have now a very large responsibility, and with no perimeter, as you mentioned, everybody has got devices. Everyone has a supercomputer in their pocket, maybe 2.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that? And things are different than they were 10 years ago, 5 years, even 2 years ago. Things are always progressing.
I sleep pretty well usually. Probably the alcohol. But my big concern and what I'll tell the board are what's our big risk? I said, the big risk is someone from the FBI and the Department of Justice showing up here with a cease and desist order because we've attacked them. I said, we're not a primary target as much as someone will infiltrate our systems and use us against someone else. I said, that's the real risk we have to deal with. Now, a lot of the data that we deal with is we're crunching numbers because my business is becoming more and more about statistical analysis, and we're looking at, how many, white males between the ages of 45 and 55 are doing this, and, where do we advertise for them? But we're getting a lot of this data through third-party downstream vendors that anonymize it for us, we aggregate it, and then we get some econometrics out of it to say, okay, well, this is how you want to advertise for those people. So my concern now starts coming out, well, what's that third party doing? Because if my client here, which is a big name client, all of a sudden has a privacy breach and we go through the chain and find out it was this guy, he didn't sign the clause, he doesn't have proper security, we've got a real issue here. So who's on the hook for it? And then you're looking at, okay, everybody's going, all the lawyers are on the phone now. And once the lawyers get on the phone, well, you can go take a nap because that's all they're going to do. Legalese at that point.
Actually, you raise the interesting aspect of security is the fact that because no company today is standalone, and especially Omnicom Media with all the clients and the suppliers and the partners and so on. So it's more, it's more what you have in control. It's there's all these other systems that are completely outside of your control and people are accessing. How do you deal with that today? Is there any mechanism where you typically use to solve that problem?
Well, first you accept that control is a fallacy and a pipe dream. No one has control. There is no control. But the reality is what are the vehicles that you use for any kind of dealing with a partner? You always have your legal contracts. So as a security executive, I'm looking at where am I managing that risk? What contractually can I do with this person? What have we agreed to and not agreed to? Have we eliminated ambiguity where it needs to be, and have I put ambiguity in where it needs to be? So I find myself working a lot with legal teams these days when you're dealing with contractual issues. I'm sorry, it's not, once you get higher up, the security analyst, that's the cool job. Up here, it's all politics and finance. But it's, you're dealing with those things and looking at, okay, well, that's one level of risk mitigation. And then you're just going down a typical risk management matrix. How are we going to address this? What kind of data am I dealing with? What are they doing for us, or what are they going to be doing for my client that's a third-party pass-through? How are we managing that expectation? How am I managing the client relationship? How am I managing the vendor relationship? And at the end of the day, you want to have that partnering mentality where you actually can pick up the phone, to someone senior in a vendor level and saying, hey, we've got an issue. I need you to work on this, and have that real, or hey, I need you to improve your product this way. When can you get this onto your roadmap? Those are the types of relationships I really enjoy, and that's what we work towards, even with our clients. That's how they work with us.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you.
Well, first, what I really like is world peace and someone to start writing secure code all the time. Then our problems would be solved. It's a plethora of stuff. It's an emerging market. If you look at like BlackRock, they're investing heavily in startups and managed security services. And the challenge you'll find in dealing with managed security is the definition of managed itself. What are you managing and how far are you going, and having those lines of open communication and escalation and say, all right, I'm hiring you to do X, Y, and Z. Let's define X, Y, and Z. I use like Outpost 24. I'll plug them. We used to be a Qualys shop, but they don't have a managed service offering. Well, I've got me, myself, and I, and 1.5 other guys to manage a global vulnerability management and chase everybody down and saying, hey, patch your systems, patch your systems. Oh, what? Yeah. And then, so with Outpost 24, now they're managing that, so they're doing all the configuration, they're doing all the patching on the VM boxes, and then they actually are sending out the emails and nagging people and saying, hey, you really have to do this, or I have to report it up the chain of command. They're doing that really well. But we sat, and it took me probably 6 months to define what I expected of them, what they were capable of doing, and then meet in the middle somewhere. Then you'll have the guy that comes in, oh, we can do it all. No, you can't. That's pie in the sky stuff. You really, that's the challenge. I've had, kind of a negative plug. Yeah, I've had a vendor come in, we sign the deal, we do the deal, coming towards the end of oh, we're out of that business. We're not doing that anymore. Good luck. And we're like, huh? Did you see how much money you left on the table, dude? Wow. So, bad management. So, that's kind of what we're doing with managed services. You have to look at them. You have to build that partnership with them. You have to be able to say, what can you do? Let's define the terms, and let's make sure that we have clear lines of escalation and what I'm expecting for you to deliver to me. Again, let's define media. I'm not a Sony, I'm not a Viacom. We use those are channels and vendors for us. All we do is figure out where to place the advertising, that we're more of a professional service strategy company, even though media is in our name. But no, Mike Hankins over at NBC Universal, there's security professionals throughout the industry. WPP has a whole team of information security professionals. The 4As which is like the governing body of advertising, of the advertising industry. They write the standard terms and contracts and stuff like that everyone expects for advertising. I sit on a task force over there where they're saying, hey, we got to catch up. The advertising industry is behind in this space, but we're catching up quickly simply because we know we're dealing with big data, and between what's transitioning and what we see coming into the future of media consumption. Print's not dead yet, but it's getting close to ICU. As the next generations, as our kids come up into this world, we can't even fathom what the next big thing is. You've got Google playing around with wearables, and they've got the car that's driving itself. Is it going to be something like in Demolition Man where, you tell the car you want to drive or not drive? Oh, I'll drive it. And everything's right there in some type of wearable or, and if you look at Kurzweil, what he's talking about with nanotechnologies, will we actually have heads-up displays embedded into our eyeballs in the next 20 years? We don't know. So when I talk of risk management, I have found that for me, that's the best way to get things done, because when you're talking to a CFO, they understand risk management. They don't understand cross-site scripting. They don't understand SQL injection or big data or Hadoop. Or they don't. They're like, huh? You're like, you're taking a significant risk and you're putting this much revenue on the line. If we don't do this, that gets their attention. hell if I know. You get infected every day from everything. I mean, there's no way to keep up with this stuff. There's variants. I mean, you've got whole armies of people writing stuff. That used to be when I started in the industry, all we worried about, was script kiddies. And I could set up a nice flat barrier defense and keep 99.9% of everybody out of my stuff. Guess what? They got smart. They grew up. They got engineering degrees. Now they can write low-level threats that come right on port 80, 443. Some fool clicks on or downloads the latest infected application. I mean, nobody knows where those apps are coming from. And the mindset of culture has changed. Everyone accepts this, that they're safe. Oh, I'm getting it on my phone. I'm safe. Yeah, no, not really. You don't know where that server is. You don't know what's been penetrated. And today you have to look at it. How are you actually qualifying? And I see that as a growing service, that people qualifying, hey, this is a known bad site. Don't go there. But I catch variants, probably 10,000 variants a day in our front-end systems, filtering. We had 4 cases. 2 of them actually got into a file server share. We tweaked down some of our defenses, and the last 2 cases we had impacted the user. Our policy states that you should be saving all your stuff on file servers anyway, so anything you had on your laptop local, sorry. We do not deal with, we do not pay ransoms. Sure. So when I look at managed service providers, again, what am I looking for them to manage, and how am I defining that management? I want to see, have you been doing this? Do you actually have an office? Is there a place of business? Where are you incorporated? Who are some of your other clients? I call and check references. Who have you done business with? As far as a POC for managed services, it's pretty tough, because depending on what you're letting them manage, in essence, got to hand over the keys to the kingdom. It's like going to a car dealership and having the guy say, yeah, take it out for a test and bring it back at the end of the day. I'll be trashing that car. Especially if it's a Humvee. Yes. Anyway, but yeah, you really have to have an idea, and I recommend looking at, if you're getting new into managed services, find something that you can put your toes in the water. Don't even stick your foot all the way down, but something that for security services, like, yeah, let's let them start managing this and see how well that works. And then if they do more, then give them more. But you're going to have to really vet them thoroughly, because you literally are handing over the keys to the kingdom and all the perimeters and everything like that. The good thing is, in a company like mine, it's a holding company within a holding company. I manage over 30 different brands under our holding company. And I've got IT guys all over the world, and every one of them's like, I need to have firewall access. No, you don't. And that's one of the things I outsource manage. It's locked down. Those people don't make it changes until I and the CIO approve that change. So I know what's going on in my firewall. I know where it's locked down, and it stays locked down. So it's a thorough vetting process, just like you do anything with an RFP. You have a good template. You go out there. You put everybody's things. This is what I expect of you. I want to see a list of who the key people in your organization are. How long have you been in business, and vet them out thoroughly. But you need to define what manage means to you on that thing you're looking to outsource that management for.
Yeah, last question. Go ahead.
You mentioned outsourcing the same WPP work you're outsourcing.
Yeah, you did. It's like it's a pendulum, right? There's a while that everyone was outsourcing everything, and now it's started coming back, and then it's going back that way. And it depends on, it's an ebb and flow of the economies, I think, and what makes sense. Luckily for us in this room, being in information security and technology in general, there is a huge talent shortage and a crisis in America today for companies trying to find fully qualified people to do jobs. You try and find people that can do this, and they can't even, hack their way into a simple Linux box. And it's like, yeah, you want to be a senior analyst? No. It's tough, and it goes both ways, and I think it's going to be selective, and you're going to see more and more hybridization. I think as platforms as a service and infrastructures as a service. I hate using the word cloud. That's such a made-up marketing term, but it's going to come back to that mentality of what makes sense, where it makes sense. Do I need to hire a whole bunch of desktop and help desk people to answer calls about Excel and Word? No, I can find a company that can handle that. When it's a bespoke media application that we wrote, well, then you know what, we need to hire and train people on that application. I think infrastructure as a whole in the next 5 years, and I've told a lot of my server guys, you guys are going to be out of jobs here because we're looking to get rid of everything. I mean, I really don't want a data center anymore. I'll manage the WAN, the pipes, the ping, and all that. But as far as servers go, we're looking for platform as a service, and just deliver me the application. Because the days of giant bespoke internal applications are, and it depends again on your industry, but there's something out there. There's somebody writing something new every day that's like, hey, that works for business. Travel and expense. Why aren't you on Concur? Why would you even want to have that headache? Transfer that entire PCI risk and HIPAA compliance risk right over to them. Sign your contract up. Now all your travel and expense, and all you get at the end of the day is a data dump that goes into a general ledger entry. Sign me up. That's the kind of stuff you look for. And when you look at the WPP IBM deal, WPP said, hey, what's our main business? It's not IT. So they moved out. And they're moving. They're moving into advertising from like the DMP perspective and from, but they're not the traditional advertiser. They're more of a purveyor they're more of a vendor to a WPP or to a Omnicom Group type player, just like Google. We all do business with Google. They're in advertising. Yeah, they're just another media vehicle. I don't see them as a threat, and I don't see IBM or AT&T or Microsoft, and Cisco, they all boast and talk to us all the time about their advertising services. And it's like, great, another media vehicle for me to get an ad out there somewhere. They're not doing the creative thing. They're not doing the real like PR type stuff that we do in those companies. So they're just they're no more than a Sony or a Deco billboard or anything like that. It's just one more vehicle to get an advertisement out there. How we charge it, how we track it. The deal with Cisco, if we could ever get it past the FCC, is to get the data off of those set-top boxes. That is advertising gold right there, is knowing what shows are being real-time. It put Nielsen out of business. And it's like, what shows are being watched? When are they being watched? Which set-top box was that coming from? Do I have an idea? Is that in the master bedroom? Is that in the living room? You have these kind of technologies that can be very invasive and scary. But at the same time, if they're properly managed, is a wealth of data for us and our industry. We're watching. And we want you to buy the Apple iPhone 8, 9, whatever's up to. We have no need for that in our industry. We do a lot with Amazon simply because with R2 and some of the big data stuff that we do for crunching numbers, it's easy for me to spin up CPU and down, but hardcore encryption and trusted, it's like this, and this is how I explain it to other CISOs from my clients who are like, you're going to have all this stuff. I'm like, really? Let me explain the world to you. Yes, it's top secret for 3 months. You're paying us to come up with a plan to make it public. So for 3 months, yes, we'll lock it down. We'll do this little bit of security. But after that, you want me running my mouth about your product and every vehicle that you want to target this product for. That's the nature of our business. So we have these, it makes it difficult too, because you have very tight windows of, this is a pre-launch product. Nobody can know about it. Shh, top secret. But figure out how to get it out to as many people as possible without spilling the beans. And then spill the beans on this day. And then we go crazy. So everything from big events, flash mob parties, you name it, we'll figure out how to get that message out.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.